The untold story of Marie Osmond's 8 children. Imagine a lone spotlight that cuts through darkness. On stage stands Marie Osmond, a picture of poise, voice trembling with power, surrounded by cheers that echo like applause from another life. Yet behind that curtain, just beyond the audience's reach, sit 8 nearly invisible legacies, her children, some adopted, one gone too soon, all marked by a life both illuminated and eclipsed by fame. This is the story not of the icon, but of those who lived in her orbit, and what happens when the light fades. Marie's rise, fame, and family. Marie Osmond was born in 1959, the only daughter in a family of 9 siblings. She wasn't supposed to be the star. That was Donnie's role. Clean-cut, camera-ready, the boy next door America adored. But at just 13, Marie released Paper Roses, and suddenly the spotlight bent toward her. She had the voice of an angel and the vulnerability of someone who didn't ask to be seen quite so brightly. Throughout the 1970s and early 80s, Marie became a household name. TV shows, Vegas residencies, interviews framed by perfect hair and practiced grace. Yet even as her public life soared, her private one remained complicated. She married young, divorced, remarried, and divorced again. She battled postpartum depression, navigated Mormon expectations, and waded through the emotional undercurrent of being a woman in a famously male-driven family dynasty. But perhaps Marie's most enduring and complicated legacy isn't her voice or her fame. It's the family she built, biological and adopted, shaped not just by love, but by grief, hope, rebellion, and silence. Stephen, 1983. Marie's first child, Stephen James Craig, was born during her first marriage to college basketball player Stephen Lyle Craig. He arrived at the height of her career, when tours and appearances rarely slowed. Stephen, from the beginning, carried the weight of being the first. He grew up in hotel rooms and backstage dressing areas, sandwiched between makeup artists and managers. As a child, he was thoughtful, quiet, and surprisingly observant. By the time he reached adolescence, he had learned to disappear into rooms, a survival skill in a family constantly watched. Unlike his mother, Stephen never sought out the spotlight. He gravitated toward sports, faith, and eventually, family. After a brief period of public interest during his teenage years, when tabloids speculated he might follow his mother into showbiz, Stephen retreated. He served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the 2000s and later married. He is now a father himself. Stephen represents the quiet resistance, the child who saw fame and turned the other way. Today, he lives a private life, often seen only in glimpses, family holiday photos, rare interviews, and the occasional event beside his mother. He chose normalcy, and in doing so, claimed a kind of freedom Marie never could. Jessica, 1987. Jessica entered Marie's life through adoption in 1987. From early childhood, she was bold and intellectually curious. There was always a spark behind her eyes, the kind that made teachers pause and wonder what stories she would one day tell. Growing up in the Osmond household was both a blessing and a burden. Jessica, like her siblings, was raised in the LDS faith, a world of structure, tradition, and quiet compliance. But Jessica wasn't built for quiet. As she moved into adolescence, questions about identity, belonging, and self-definition began to take hold. In 2009, she came out as gay, a rare and at the time controversial move in a conservative religious family. Marie publicly supported her daughter, even as media outlets swarmed with speculation and judgment. It was a watershed moment for both of them. For Marie, it was a test of maternal love. For Jessica, a declaration of self. Today, Jessica lives quietly with her wife, working as a counselor. Her life is far removed from the chaos of her upbringing, yet she remains deeply rooted in compassion and self-awareness. Her journey, from adopted daughter to LGBTQ+ advocate, is one of the most quietly radical arcs in the Osmond legacy. Michael, 1991 to 2010. Michael Bryan arrived in 1991, adopted as an infant. Sensitive, shy, and deeply introspective, Michael was the kind of child who felt too much and said too little. As a boy, he loved music and computers, spending hours alone building imaginary worlds or scribbling lyrics into a well-worn notebook. He was gentle, affectionate, and prone to melancholy. In high school, he struggled with depression and anxiety, intensified by bullying and questions of self-worth. His pain deepened as he entered young adulthood. On February 26, 2010, Michael died by suicide. He was 18. The loss shattered the family. Marie later revealed that Michael had battled addiction and mental illness. In interviews, her voice often breaks when she speaks of him. There is no wrapping this in poetry. There is only silence and sorrow, and the impossible grief of a mother who will always wonder if she could have done more. Michael's memory remains a haunting thread through Marie's later life. She speaks of him often, not as a cautionary tale, but as a soul she deeply loved. His death changed the shape of the Osmond family forever. Brandon, 1996. Brandon was adopted in 1996, a boy with a wild streak and eyes that carried stories. He was fiercely independent from a young age, a skateboarder, an artist, a kid drawn to the edges of structure. Growing up, Brandon often clashed with rules. His rebellion wasn't dramatic, it was quiet and persistent. He didn't want fame, didn't want structure, didn't want to be a symbol of someone else's narrative. In his 20s, Brandon found his place behind the lens: photography, graphic design, and music production. He used art to make sense of his own contradictions. The adopted child of a pop icon, the grieving sibling of Michael, the kid who didn't want to be seen until he could control how. Brandon lives largely off the grid today, surfacing in family photos with tattoos and a gentle smile. He's a reminder that some children grow best when no one is watching. Brianna, 1997. Adopted a year after Brandon, Brianna was the extrovert of the family. Bubbly, affectionate, and endlessly creative, she brought levity into a house often weighed down by grief and expectation. As a teen, Brianna explored acting and modeling. She was striking, expressive, and emotionally open, often wearing her heart on her sleeve. But the pressure to maintain appearances took its toll. She struggled with anxiety, and later with the deep guilt that comes from being happy in a family marked by sorrow. Brianna eventually stepped away from entertainment to pursue a more grounded life. She married David Schwepp, a cinematographer, and together they have children. Her Instagram is a quiet collage of motherhood, creativity, and healing, a life not without pain, but no longer dictated by it. Matthew, 1999. Matthew was adopted in 1999, a thoughtful, soft-spoken child who rarely raised his voice but always had something meaningful to say. He was deeply affected by Michael's death. Just 11 at the time, he retreated inward, trying to make sense of a loss that made no sense at all. As he grew older, Matthew leaned into faith. He served a church mission, like his older brother Stephen, and returned with a sense of grounded calm. He pursued psychology and social work, hoping to become the kind of person he once needed. Matthew remains one of the least public of the Osmond children, but his impact within the family is quietly profound. He listens, he supports, he endures. Abigail, 2002. The youngest of the Osmond children, Abigail was adopted in 2002. She was Marie's final act of hope, a new chapter after years of chaos and heartache. Abby grew up in a different world than her older siblings. The spotlight had dimmed, fame had quieted. She knew of loss, but experienced it as memory more than moment. Still, she carried it. Creative and introspective, Abby writes poetry and essays about identity and family. Her words are often raw, often beautiful. In interviews, Marie calls her an old soul. Today, Abigail is in her early 20s, navigating the precipice between youth and adulthood. She talks about becoming a therapist, or maybe a writer. She still hasn't decided. What she knows is that her family's story shaped her, but it won't define her. In the end, Marie Osmond's story is not just one of fame or tragedy. It is a tapestry of children, each stitched with different colors: defiance, tenderness, silence, sorrow, strength. Some faded from public view, some grew louder, one never grew old. But all 8, Stephen, Jessica, Michael, Brandon, Brianna, Matthew, Abigail, carry a part of Marie, and in their quiet resilience, they remind us of the humanity beneath celebrity. Because behind every icon, there are the stories we never see, the ones that matter most. If this story moved you, subscribe for more untold stories of celebrity families, legacy, and the lives lived between the headlines, leave a comment below. Which child's story stayed with you?